Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this multi-location meeting, hybrid meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee. Today's the 17th of March. My name is Joanna Jenkins, and I will be chairing the meeting. I have a few points to raise before we start the agenda. As you can tell, we've just had a fire alarm. Apologies to everybody. This meeting will be recorded. Please ensure your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Members who are present in the chamber, please mute any devices you are using. And if you wish to speak or you are asked to do so, please raise your hand. And please can those at home raise their electronic hands on Teams. Thank you very much indeed. The first item on the agenda, item 1, is Chair's announcements. Do we have any members of the public viewing the meeting today?
No, Chair, there's no members of the public viewing the meeting today.
Thank you very much. And therefore, I move on as there are no further announcements. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any interest to declare?
I see no hands raised, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. This was the meeting held on the 15th of February 2023, and the papers are at pages 5 to 8 of the agenda pack and are here for approval. Does any member have any comments on the accuracy of these minutes? I see no hands, therefore, can I please have a proposer and seconder to approve the minutes?
I'm happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Richards.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. So agenda item 4 is the Audit Wales annual summary for 2022. This report can be found on pages 9 to 20 of the circulated agenda pack and is here for information purposes. So does any officer have any comments to make at this point?
Chair, nothing to add to the detail in the covering report, but Audit Wales colleagues may wish to add some detail to the appendix.
Thank you. Our Audit Wales colleagues who aren't with us in the chamber today, perhaps you would like to make some further comments.
Thank you very much, Chair. Non Jenkins here from Audit Wales, and Anwen is here with me too in Gillian's absence. Happy to leave it to you if you want to ask any questions, but our annual audit summary, as we will bring to you and every other council in Wales around about this time every year, is genuinely just a summary of all of the work that we have undertaken over the last year. Most of it is, as you can see, cut and paste of that work that has come before you. So we will have presented all of this information to you already. It's genuinely just a summary of that. We've included some links to for you too of the reports that we've issued and published, and also we've included anything that was relating to any other inspectorates in it too, as well as our national studies. Anything else that Anwen might want to add? Happy for her to add, or happy for you to ask any questions.
No, nothing else for me to add. Happy to take any questions though.
Do any members have any questions that they'd like to raise at this point? I see no comments or hands raised, so therefore we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. And of course, this information was for noting only. Therefore, as a committee, we note the report. Thank you. Agenda item 5, this is the Audit Wales work programme and timetable quarterly update. And this report can be found at pages 21 to 42 of the agenda pack, and again is here for information purposes. So do any officers have any comments to make on this report?
Chair, nothing to add to the covering report, but again, Audit Wales colleagues may wish to add to the detail in the appendix.
Thank you. So Audit Wales colleagues, perhaps you'd like to raise some points.
Thank you, dear Chair. I'll leave it with Anwen to go through the financial audit bit at the beginning of the quarterly update. But as you can see, we bring these updates to you quarterly. The next one now will be after the end of March, just to keep you in the loop on everything that we're working on across Audit Wales, and also if there are any work that CIW and Estyn are also working on, it's in here. We also try and include all of the links to the published work that we have done, so that it becomes a bit of a repository, hopefully for you to be able to link back to, thinking, oh, maybe I've missed this one, has it been published yet? Then hopefully this helps guide you through what we have and haven't completed. Obviously, it's being quarterly, and this up to the end of 31st of December, we will have done some bits and pieces since then, but obviously that will be captured in the next quarterly update. So I'll just hand over to Anwen at this point to take you through any updates on the financial audit bits of it, and then I'll take you through quickly the performance bits. Thank you.
Thanks, Non. For our financial audit work, if you turn to page 25 to 26 of the reports pack, you can see we refer to the completion of the audit of the Council's financial statements this quarter. The Auditor General gave an unqualified opinion on the Council's financial statements on the 13th of January, following the approval of the financial statements at the Governance and Audit Committee meeting the day before, the 12th of January. We've also been doing ongoing work on the certification of the Council's grant returns for the 21-22 financial year. I think that's all from the financial audit side. So, Non, do you want to go through the performance audit side?
Yeah, happy to do so. So in terms of the 21-22 performance audit work, as you will see on page 27 onwards, we're building in our Wellbeing and Future Generations Act into all of our work, rather than it being a standalone work as part of that year. We completed the improvement reporting audit, and our assurance and risk assessment work for 21-22 is nearing completion. So I think in terms of clarifying this as a just to help, it's partly complete because we have done a number of the bullet points, but there's one yet to be done, which is the recovery planning one. So just to clarify that, and then but the others have been completed and reported on in the published links that you will see in the status column. The springing forward work for 21-22 is ongoing and is being drafted at the moment. And then if we go on to page 30, this summarises our 22-23 progress. So the assurance and risk assessment work for 22-23 is ongoing. So we've started, so if you look at the bullet points under the scope there, the capital management programme is yet to start, but we'll do that after the end of the financial year. We've started the performance information work, and thanks to Karen and her team for facilitating the arrangements for that, and also the wellbeing objectives work too. We've also picked up on the governance issue as part of the following up on the internal audit, following up on the governance action plan that you had in place following the investigation, and we did that as part of the assurance and risk assessment work in the autumn. So that's ongoing. You will get outputs for this work when they are complete. Then going on to page 31, the thematic review for unscheduled care is nearing completion. It's been a big piece of work and a very useful piece of work. So we obviously will be reporting that back to you when it's finalised and reported. The digital thematic review that we're undertaking across all councils is being undertaken as we speak between now and the end of September. And thanks again to the officers of the council for facilitating the work for that. And the scrutiny review we're undertaking currently. So, and thank you to everybody that's contributed so far. I'm sure we'll get round to speaking to many of you as part of that. So thank you. And then I won't go into detail on the next pages, but they're just to bring you up to speed on where we're at in terms of our local government national studies planned work and those in progress. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of all the work that we are doing and where we're at on them. Diolch yn fawr, thank you.
Thank you. And it was really good to see the links, and I agree it's a sensible place to have a repository of information. So that's a very good idea. Do members have any questions at this point? Yes, the Vice Chair, Mr. Bagley, thank you.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. Just a quick couple of questions. In fact, I've got three, if that's okay. If I could draw your attention to page 26. This is to do with the certification of the grants. It says the timetables in line with certification deadlines, December 22 through to February 23. I'm just conscious we're coming up 2 weeks before the end of March. Is there anything that the committee need to be aware of in terms of, I suppose, outstanding grants and the certification deadline at the end of the financial year?
Yes. Yeah, so we've completed our work on the non-domestic rates, teachers' pensions and social care workforce grants. And we completed our initial testing on the housing benefit subsidy. So at the moment, we're discussing our findings on the housing benefit subsidy audit with the team at the moment. And we're hoping to conclude that work over the next few weeks. Nationally, there has been slippage in those deadlines that are referred to in the report. So DWP are aware that work is still ongoing, and yeah, that's on a national basis, so it's not just here. So I wouldn't say there's any specific concerns to raise from that. Okay, so no risks in terms of getting the grants over the line. That's great, thank you. And I've got two further questions. One was on page 28, which is the performance work on assurance and risk assessments. In the status column, it says partly complete. I can see the updates on the AOA, it's got the carbon reduction, it's got the financial position. I get it's partly complete. I suppose I'm trying to get a feel for what's outstanding. So reading the report, I'm guessing it's stuff like the recovery planning. I'm just wondering if you could just sort of draw out to the committee anything that is outstanding. Is there any issues? And if we can move that to get it complete, because I'm conscious again that relates to year ending March 22.
Thank you, and yes, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, of the bullet points, the only one that we haven't undertaken yet, or haven't finalised, I suppose is the point, is the recovery planning one. Everything else has been completed, and also you'll see in the published letters that we've done. And I suppose the reason that we've done them in published letters like this is that when we do a piece of work on something, we'd rather send you a letter there and then rather than you wait until we finished all of the bullet points and then send you one report, because then that might be out of date. So for example, we did the Local Government and Elections Act and self-assessment piece of work early in 2022. Now, had we waited until we'd finished doing the other bits of it, you wouldn't get that through. So that's why we're doing it in a series of letters for you rather than as one report, so that you can get feedback in the moment to help you move things forward as and when. So you'll see there the published letter for the Local Government Elections Act at the top, then the published letter for carbon reduction, and also the published letter for the financial position update. So the only one that's outstanding, we covered the governance element as part of the ongoing assurance risk assessment work that we did in terms of the assessing the council's response to its independent investigation. We covered that with internal audit, and they brought their report to you in your February meeting, I think. So that finalises that. So as I said, just the recovery planning.
Great, thank you. And my third and final question was on page 29. It talks about the blocks for sustainable future timetable April 22, and the status it says drafting. Is that due for completion this year, or? Yes,
it's being drafted currently, and thank you for your patience on that. It's in terms of resourcing our end, it is. So thank you very much, and also thanks to the officers for their patience too.
Right. Okay,
Did-
thank you.
Does that conclude the questions?
Yep, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do any other members have any other questions? No? Whilst I think it's very helpful again to have the letters published as links, again, from the perspective of being a repository, it may be a good idea just to draw attention to the fact that there's quite a lot more information actually contained within them, because otherwise a quick read through the papers when they're quite weighty could lead members not to be aware that there are other points to be addressed in those particular sections. But that's just an observation based on what we've just said. So, and obviously I'm really pleased about the unqualified opinion that was mentioned at the beginning. So this report is here for information. Therefore, as there are no other observations, we note the report. Thank you very much. So we move on to the next agenda item. Apologies, yes,
Okay, so no, it's just in response to that, and I suppose what we tried to do as part of the quarterly reports is these are reports that will have come before you anyway during the year. So this is more of a kind of well, it is a progress update. So you will have seen these reports in full, including the recommendations if there are any throughout the year. So we will have drawn your attention to them at various meetings throughout the year. So this is just a progress update. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. It's just this committee being alive to the fact that this is pulling everything together, basically. So, so moving on to agenda item 6. This is the Audit Wales Register of Regulators, reports and recommendations. And the report can be found at pages 43 to 50 of the agenda pack. And again, is here for information purposes. Do any officers have any comments to make at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Just to explain, at your meeting back in January, we presented the committee with an updated register of regulator reports and recommendations. And we said in that meeting that we would provide some feedback to the committee on 5 national reports and 1 local letter. So that feedback is contained in section A. So that's pages 43, 44 and 45 of the report in front of you. Since January, 1 national report of interest to the Council has been published and 1 local letter. So they are described on page 46 and have been added to the register at Appendix A. But happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Do members have any questions at this point? Thank you. I see no hands. Therefore, as I said, this report is here for information. Thank you very much indeed. So the next agenda item is agenda item 7, the Strategic Risk Register, and the report can be found at pages 51 to 58 of the agenda pack, and again is here for information purposes. Do officers have any comments to make?
Just to add, Chair, that the report is in front of this committee for members to take assurance that the Council is complying with its risk management policy, and to note that the Executive did consider this risk register recently and noted it at their meeting. So that's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, we've had conversations fairly recently about the formatting of the risk register. It's quite a large document, and whilst it's fairly easy to zoom into and look at specific parts of it, it doesn't actually make it a very friendly document to actually pick up and scan through and work our way through. But those are conversations as to how best to deal with the paperwork again. So as there were no questions from members, the report is here for information and therefore is noted. So the next agenda item is agenda item 8, Internal Audit Progress Report. This report is found at pages 59 to 74 of the agenda pack, and again is here for information purposes. So do any officers have any comments?
This is just the quarterly monitoring report that we present to committee each year. The last one was brought to you in January. Since January, we've issued 10 more reports this quarter. The details of these reports and their conclusions can be found in pages 64 to 73. There's nothing really I need to draw your attention to, as everything had a reasonable or substantial assurance. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Do members have any questions on this report? And obviously Appendix 1 is probably the part of the report people will be most interested in. Thank you. Thank you. We did actually raise some questions in the pre-briefing that myself and the Vice Chair had. I can see, Mr. Bagley, your hand is up, so maybe if you want to start referring to any questions. And I know that one of the officers has a few comments to make. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Chair. It was in relation to, I think it's page 66 of the pack. So it's report reference R43. And obviously we've got the report conclusion based on the Children's Services, emergency payments, Head of Children and Young People Services. That comes out as an assurance rating of reasonable, but I couldn't really tell from the summary papers of the report conclusion what the issue is, which is why it wasn't substantial. So I was just hoping we could give a quick update to the committee as to what the underlying weakness was in there, which warranted not being a substantial, please.
Certainly. The assurance ratings which are provided following the audit are made up by a combination of the number of recommendations made, the likelihood that the failure to action the recommendations within 6 months would lead to a significant system failure, and the impact of any system failure. That then gets put into a formula which gives a category rating of 1 to 4, which sync in with the assurance ratings. The reason for the report you refer to in relation to the emergency payments, when the audit was concluded and the details input into the formula, it came out as reasonable assurance due to the number of recommendations that we made, in particular in relation to a number of sub-petty cash accounts which hadn't been used in quite some considerable time, and which were in sort of outlying offices. So we made a recommendation in relation to those needing to be formally closed down. There were also some reimbursements which had been long outstanding. So although in general the controls were good, we did make a number of recommendations which would further enhance the controls that are in place, hence the reasonable assurance and not substantial. There is, the 3 elements which go together to make up the assurance rating.
Okay, thanks. So the weakness was in relation to small amounts of petty cash, but those have since been addressed with the recommendations. Okay, thank you.
So do members have any further questions? In which case, maybe we can go back to the points that were raised at the pre-briefing, and Anne-Marie, if you wouldn't mind addressing those.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. One of the questions raised at pre-briefing was in relation to the audit of Brynamlwg, and the question there was, what was Brynamlwg? Brynamlwg is a day service operated by our social services colleague for service users with very complex health needs. That ties off that. The other issue raised was in relation to the report number 41, details of which are on page 65, in relation to fuel usage within fleet services, and how we were tying off the issue around the driver tags still being in circulation. Basically, the driver tags are fobs which give access to the fuel pumps. our recommendations in relation to that were that the service using the information provided by the auditor should undertake an exercise to recover all of the outstanding driver tags and update their records accordingly. That recommendation is in progress. In addition, we recommended that Fleet should liaise with our payroll and ICT colleagues with a view to creating a report from the iTrent system, which is our payroll and HR system, which could be generated periodically, which would show all staff who are in possession of a tag and who have left. Because the process at the moment is that the accountable manager should notify Fleet when a member of staff leaves. That isn't always happening. So as a sort of backup to that, if some form of report could be generated and given to Fleet periodically. And we also recommended that management across Neath Talbot, because it's not only environment colleagues who have access to the fuel, should ensure that they have suitable processes in place to ensure that when staff leave their service, that they ensure that the driver's tags are returned to them. So those were the recommendations we made in relation to the driver tags. And as is normal, within the audit cycle, all of these recommendations will be checked as part of the post-audit review process. The next query that was raised was in relation to report number 40. Oh, sorry, we covered that with Mr. Bagley's question. The final query was in relation to report number 45, which is on page 67 of your papers, the data protection registration in schools. And the query there was, what was the potential consequences of not being registered with the Information Commissioner's Office and not having paid the appropriate fee. The consequence of that is that the schools could be liable to a fine up to the value of £4,350. The good news is that the schools who were identified not to have an up-to-date registration all completed the registration on the day that they were advised by the auditor that they didn't have the registration. So there is no issue with that area. The final query was really raised in relation to the Pupil Development Grant Working Group, which is referenced in Appendix 2, which is our audit plan monitoring, and it's on page 70. And just a bit of an explanation as to what that was and how it came about was asked for. Welsh Government changed a number of grants within the education field, and we were awarded a pupil development grant. It came with very little guidance from Welsh Government as to what exactly the grant money could be used for. Therefore, a working group was set up consisting of senior staff within the Education Directorate and our senior auditor, where discussions were held around which grants this pupil development grant was replacing and how best to use the grant monies under the pupil development grant to ensure, as far as possible, given the limited information that we've had or had at that point from Welsh Government, that should the grant be audited externally, we would then have a rationale as to why we had used the monies for the purposes we had. That has now come to an end, and we are content with how those monies are intended to be spent across the schools who are eligible for some of that grants monies. As far as I'm aware, that covers the issues raised at briefing.
Thank you very much indeed, and complete answers to the questions that were raised. Just one further question on the data protection registration situation. Would schools need to make sure that they revisit the fee payers register on an annual basis? Because potentially they don't want to be overpaying fees if there are fewer than 10 members of staff to be included.
What we have recommended to all of the schools is that prior to their registration coming up, that they review that they're on the correct tier, and also to ensure that they have paid the fee before the registration lapses.
Thank you very much. Do members have any further questions? Mr. Bagley?
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to make the comment. I think that's a really good update in terms of all some of the queries we talked about. I was going to comment on the fleet and the driver's tags for the fuel. I think it's just important to recognise really that there was potential there for significant fraud or abuse if that controls aren't working properly. I think it's pleasing that internal audit detected it. I think we should be questioning why we were reliant on internal audit to pick it up in the first place. And I think Anne-Marie gave quite a good update there in terms of the report that's going to be run presumably on a regular basis to make sure those tags are collected in future. We're not reliant on some internal audit 6 months down the line. My question to Anne-Marie, in terms of that report, who will that go to, and how are we, is somebody sort of reviewing it to make sure that is actually going to happen?
The actual report, the distribution for that report would have been the Chief Executive, the Director of Environment and Regeneration, the Head of Engineering and Transport, the Fleet Service Manager, and Audit Wales. The auditor who undertook the review has been in contact with the service manager and I believe colleagues within payroll around the report being produced. A post-audit review will be undertaken. We have had confirmation back from the service manager who used the information that we provided with the number of ex-members of staff who still were assigned a driver's tag. Pleasingly, no fuel had been drawn by any of those tags. Those tags have now all been cancelled, so that piece of work has been done. So, and obviously it's an evolving situation because people come and go, but we were content that at that point in time, which was quite soon after the report was issued, that the only tags in circulation were held by current members of staff.
Thanks, that's helpful. I think I meant in terms of the control going forward, obviously we need a report which says these are the people that have these driver's tags, these are the people who have now left employment, etc. And somebody needs to make sure that those tags have been collected back in and those line managers are collecting them when they leave the authority. But I'm assuming that, you know, that control will be in place going forward.
Plan.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from any members? In which case this report is for information and therefore is noted. So the next agenda item is agenda item 9, the draft internal audit strategy plan for the years 2023 to 2024, pages 75 to 100 of the agenda pack. And this report is here for a decision. So do officers have any comments to make on this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to let members know, this is the annual report we present to you detailing our draft 2023 audit plan, our draft internal audit strategy and draft internal audit charter. Each of these can be found in appendices 1 to 3 of the report. They're brought to you so that we can comply with the committee's terms of reference and also with the public sector internal auditing standards. As Chair mentioned, we're asking you to approve the 3 documents as set out in the appendices. Chair.
Thank you very much. So do members have any questions, please, on this set of papers? Thank you. If we now turn to the recommendations on page 77, there are 3 separate recommendations. I'll take them together and therefore I propose that we accept the recommendations. Does somebody second the proposal, please?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
That was Councillor Carpenter. Thank you. Councillor Richards, apologies. Thank you very much indeed. So if members do not indicate to the contrary by raising their hands, I will assume that everyone is in favour of the recommendations.
I can see no hands raised, Chair, so I can confirm those have gone through.
Thank you. So we accept that the report and its recommendations. Moving on to agenda item 10. This is urgent items. We have 1 urgent item today, and that is Neath Talbot Cybersecurity Strategy Update for 2023. This report was added into the papers after they were initially published, and the report can be found on the supplementary agenda and is listed as agenda item 10A. I believe the Chief Digital Officer, Mr. Owen, is going to highlight the report, and I can see he's sitting in the chamber. Welcome, nice to meet you. So perhaps you wouldn't mind highlighting some key issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report's for information and has already been through our Policy and Resources Cabinet Subcommittee. Specifically, what I wanted to highlight today for members is within section 10, there's a reference to the Audit Wales Learning from Cyber Attacks report. And essentially, I wanted to provide members with assurance that officers have reviewed the current cybersecurity provision and the cybersecurity strategy action plan, taking into consideration the key findings and lessons learned from the Audit Wales report. And what we've done is ensured those findings have been incorporated into our action plan and appropriately prioritised then going forwards. So it's just to draw attention to the Audit Wales report effectively. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So do members have any questions about this report and specifically of the Chief Digital Officer? Sorry. Thank you. This report is here for information and therefore is noted, obviously a very important element for consideration, not just now, but in the future. So thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the next agenda item, that's agenda item 11, and that deals with access to meetings. Are members in agreement that we move into private session at this point? I propose that we do so, but I would like a seconder, please.
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Richards. So in which case, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, so does anybody object to moving into private session?
I see no hands, Chair.
In which case, thank you, and we will cease recording this meeting. Thank you very much.